Thank you. I literally ran down the street just now. I'm sweating like crazy. Bruchim habayim. Welcome to everyone. I'm sorry for being late.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Well, thanks for sticking around, everyone. Greatly appreciated, or whoever did stick around. Tom Suozzi was the Nassau County Executive from 2002 to 2010, or December 31st, 2009. He has also run for governor in his illustrious past and has held many different offices in Nassau County and throughout the state. And he's running again this year in November 5th. And just for the purposes of brevity, go for it.
Go for it. Okay. So you had to bring up that I ran for governor. I ran for governor against Elliot Spitzer, which did not turn out very well for me. Didn't turn out very well for him either, but I was the mayor of my hometown for 8 years. Before that, I was a certified public accountant. I worked for Arthur Anderson and Company. I'm an attorney. I was the clerk to the chief judge, thank you. Chief judge for the Eastern District of New York. I worked for a law firm, Sherman and Sterling. And I was mayor for 8 years, county executive for 8 years. The past 4 years, 3.5 years, I worked for Lazard Frere, which is an international investment banking firm, and also for a law firm, Harris Beach, which is one of the larger New York State-focused firms, 200 attorneys. I opened their Long Island office for them. And I appreciate, Jeff, you setting this up for me, and again, I apologize for being late. I got a call at 8:30 this morning saying that I was supposed to be meeting with 25 Hispanic clergy members out in Freeport, and I had a meeting scheduled for 11 o'clock in New York City, so I had to go to that meeting, and then I went to the meeting in New York City. I was late for that, and now I'm late for you, and I apologize very much. I really feel very badly. Nassau County is a fantastic... How many of you actually live in Nassau County? Okay. How many of you don't live in Nassau County? How many of you don't live in New York? What are you guys doing here?
I live up there.
Okay. So Nassau County is a fantastic place. It was the first mass-produced suburb in America. It really took off in 1947 when they built Levittown, and they had explosive residential growth in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and then commercial growth in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We've stopped growing, and we have not had any growth in our commercial tax base or our residential tax base since 1990. And young people are not moving in. The Orthodox community is very different in that there is growth going on in the Orthodox community, both in the Five Towns area, in West Hempstead, and on the North Shore and Great Neck. We have a lot of growth in the Orthodox community, and there's also a big Persian Jewish community growing in Great Neck as well. And there is growth in some other ethnic groups, like there are new Indians moving to the area, new Koreans moving to the area, and that's good, positive growth for us. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting, was it last night? I had a meeting last night in Cedarhurst. It was all young Orthodox men that are in their, I would say, 30s and 40s, which is not that often that I get to speak to a large group of people like that, because there is 1/3 less 24 to 34-year-olds today in Nassau County than there were in 1990. So we've got a challenge. We have stopped growing. And because we're not growing, in 1999 we got into a big fiscal mess. The economy in the United States was booming. The economy in the world was booming. President Clinton was the president. We had surpluses. We had low unemployment. We had high home ownership. The internet revolution was going on. The economy was great in the United States and in the world, and Nassau County was on the brink of bankruptcy. Why? Because they were still spending like we were still growing. And I got elected and took office in January of 2002, 3 months after September 11th of 2001. The economy was now softening. We had new expenses related to Homeland Security, and we had massive deficits, and we're on the brink of bankruptcy. In fact, it was so bad the state had put in place a control board. So this lack of growth is really the challenge that we face, because my successor in office, who won the race in 2009, has now taken over, and he has made it worse as far as the finances go. So I'm going to quickly short-circuit my talk on the finances of Nassau County, other than to say when I was in office, I had 13 bond upgrades. My successor's had 3 bond downgrades, and he's on negative credit watch. I had 8 balanced budgets. He's had 2 deficits. I worked with the control board that was put in place in 1999. They're fading out of existence. They're called NIFA. He fought with the control board. They've now gone to what they call hard controls, taking over the county finances. I reduced the debt in Nassau County. He's increased the debt in Nassau County. That's why I've been endorsed by Newsday. I believe I'll probably be endorsed by the New York Times later this week, and I hope I'll be endorsed by the Five Towns Jewish the finances of the county, I know how to fix them. I know what it takes. I've got the background and experience. I've proven I can do it. And I can't do it by raising taxes because I'm one of the people that fought for the property tax cap in New York State. When I ran for governor of New York State against Elliott, my main issue was to cap the growth of property taxes. Elliott was against that. A year into office, he realized it was a big problem as he got to understand the state a little bit better, and he appointed me as chairman of the New York State Commission on Property Tax Relief. And I wrote the report and traveled the state to push for the property tax cap, and now Governor Cuomo has passed it into law. The problem is that our property tax cap is being undermined in Nassau County because of the way the Mangano administration has done the assessments, and it's caused people's tax rates to go up by 19% over the past 2 years alone. During the time that the property tax cap has been in place, should be no more than 2 or 3% growth a year. It's been 19% over the past 2 years. In fact, the taxes on Mangano's house alone have gone up by $2,800, 24% over the past 2 years. So the finances need to be fixed, but we need to fix the finances so we can stand on a firm foundation and look at to where we have to head to grow in the future. 95% of the county needs to stay the same: single-family housing, parks, beaches, nice suburban quality of life. 5% of our downtown, 5% of our landmass in our downtowns, we need to develop up. We need to build apartments and offices with restaurants and shops on the first floor because we need to expand the tax base. We need to bring in new sales tax revenues. We need to create jobs, but most importantly, we need to create environments where young people want to live. Young people are not moving out to Nassau County. Unlike the Orthodox community, outside of the Orthodox community, people don't get married in their early 20s anymore. If they get married, they get married in their late 20s, early 30s. So if you're a 20-something to 30-something-year-old college graduate, you're not looking to move out to suburbia. Without those young people and their energy and their training and their entrepreneurialism, we're not going to have the people to provide the jobs to bring in high-skilled, high-tech businesses that we need for the future of Long Island. So I've got a plan to expand the tax base and to build these cool downtowns, and I'm just going to refer you to my webpage, www.suozzi2013.com, as to how to create these cool downtowns that look like, for those of you that are out in Nassau County now, Garden City, Rockville Center, and Great Neck. We need to do that in 10 or 15 places in Nassau County in order to expand the tax base and to bring the sales tax, create the jobs, and bring in the young people. I want you to know specifically regarding your community that I have a great appreciation for the issues that you deal with. I grew up going to all Catholic schools. I went to 8 years at St. Patrick's Grade School, 4 years at Chaminade, all boys Catholic school out in Nassau County. I went to Boston College. I went to Fordham Law School, Jesuit schools. And I understand the challenge of paying your property taxes, living in the community, but also having the extra added expense of sending your kids to private school at the same time. And the extra added expense that also goes along with other parts of your life, whether it's keeping kosher or sending your kids to camp in the summer. And it's a real challenge to live within those economic strictures that you have. So I want you to know that I'll work the best I can to try and help you with different issues that you have to try and address the affordability question and to see what I can do to help you regarding the state related to tax credits and private school vouchers and things like that. I want you to also know that one of the most important things at the local level, I know that a lot of Orthodox will vote Republican on the national level. On the local level, there's no Democratic or Republican way to pick up your garbage, they say. On the local level, it's important to have somebody that you feel can do the job and somebody that appreciates you and has a relationship with you and other members of your community, so that when there is a problem, like there was with Hurricane Sandy, that you have somebody that you can call that will show up and help you to address the problems. When there's a problem in the community related to the police, that you have somebody that you can have a relationship with and will show up right away to try and help you. So I want you to know that I have a great relationship with a lot of people in the community already. I want to enhance that relationship going forward, and I want to open it up for any questions that you may have. If you just hear me today and you decide that you like Tom Suozzi, I need you to tell your friends and tell your neighbors and tell your relatives. It's a very close race. It's a very, very tight race. So if you decide that you like me and you're for me, I'm asking you to spread the word. If you decide today, I'm mad at Suozzi, I don't like Suozzi, I can't believe he was late, he talked for too long, I only came because I was asked to come by Jeff. If you decide you're not going to vote for me, I ask you to please keep it to yourself. All right? Thank you very much, everybody. Somebody's got to ask me some questions. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Matt Borland. I'm a resident of Cedars.
Good. I was just there last night.
Yes, I know. I was invited to that event, but I know I was coming here. So.
Okay, good. Last night I did
My wife had to go out
I did a better job last
days.
night. And they had sushi last night.
Right.
We had sushi also, but
Okay.
we stopped.
I first of all want to thank you for your hard work for the past years as New York County executive and for your involvement now. I definitely have seen your presence in trying to get to understand the issues of the community down in the Towns where I live. One of the issues that I personally I'm concerned about is that issues related to the hurricane. I was flooded during the hurricane, and I would like to know what your ideas are in terms of mitigation of what New York City manager come out with a 500-page report,
Right.
the detailing what
Right,
mitigation
exactly what should be done, piece by piece by piece.
Some of that would even cover, would protect part of the South Shore,
Yeah.
Jamaica Bay and those kind of areas. So the question is what your plans are in terms of dealing with the flood mitigation, in terms of joining with New York City. I would imagine joining with New York City would give it a stronger presence trying to get something done. The other aspect of this is flood insurance, that the rates are going to all start skyrocketing. And the only thing that could bring it down besides an act of Congress would be some mitigation projects. And that's something that could start severely affecting communities when you have $10,000 or $15,000 flood insurance.
So here we are on the 1-year anniversary, and we have no plan as to what to do, which is, I mean, it's crazy. When I first came into office after September 11th, the first thing I did was create an Office of Emergency Management, because the county never had one before. It was all police-centric also. It didn't take into account the fire and the health department and the public works. So there are structural things that need to be done in order to address this going forward. I don't know the answer to the mitigation things. I need to bring in, on my first month in office, a team of experts and community members to have a conversation as to what are the best things we can do to mitigate. Bring in the engineers and bring in the public works experts, and we have to deal with the sewage treatment plants, we have to deal with the dunes, we have to deal with boardwalks and bulkheading, we have to deal with raising streets. There's so many different things.
Yeah.
Right now there's been no public conversation about that whatsoever. No. Number two, this administration is being investigated by the Attorney General, the District Attorney, and the federal government for the contracts they gave away for Hurricane Sandy contracts, because they gave away stuff, the huge contributors, and they didn't go out to the proper bidding process as well. And these guys were cutting down trees on the North Shore because they were getting paid by the cut, when the whole South Shore was where it was devastated. They were getting paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars for cutting down trees on the North Shore. It didn't make any sense. The most immediate thing that has to happen right away, even as we're setting up the task force of people to figure out what the answer with the experts are, is there is no database in the county currently of who's still out of their house. What should have happened from the very get-go, the first day, is there should have been a database of all the people that were affected. And on that database has to be a matrix. What's happening with FEMA and the federal government overall? What's happening with New York State Rising? What's happening with your insurance company? What's happening with your contractor? What's happening with the local building department, or the town building department? What's happening with all these different categories? Because first of all, we don't have a count as to how many people are still out of their houses, and there's a lot of people. We don't know if the particular insurance company is the one that's taking advantage of people more than other ones, not paying their claims. But there may be a bad adjuster, for example, that's saying you have this earth movement problem, that maybe just one person or two people or three people that are doing it worse than others. We don't know if there's particular contractors that are taking advantage of their customers. So you have to have a database. So I'm a very, I came up in these real companies. I mean, Arthur Anderson and Company, Sherman and Sterling. I worked for Lazard. I know what it's like in a large operation. Nassau County's larger than 11 states. If we were a Fortune 1000 company, we'd be the 750th largest company on the Fortune 1000 with a $2.6 billion budget. So I know how to run a big organization. This guy and his team, it's kind of like, hey, what do you think, Joey? I don't know, talk to your cousin, he can take care of that. I mean, it's like a mom and pop operation.
Just from my experience there was very little to no response from the county in the aftermath.
They were overwhelmed. They don't know.
Cedars Village, there was a response in terms of what they could
Even
do.
the town of Hempstead.
Even from the county level, nothing.
They're over their head.
Hear from anybody, nothing.
Ed is over his head, and we're in the red. Yes. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much for coming out today. My name is Yehuda Friedman. I'm a resident of Lawrence, so actually next door. Neighbor of Cedars.
I just had a fundraiser in Lawrence the other day. I had Phil Goldfeder was there to endorse me, and Hadassah Lieberman, Joe Lieberman.
Sure.
I was the first Democrat in New York State to endorse Joe Lieberman for President of the United States of America, and he couldn't come, so he sent Hadassah because they've got grandchildren in Lawrence.
Yeah, absolutely. They're neighbors of mine. From Hurricane Sandy until today, what improvements or suggestions do you have to improve the whole situation with LIPA, because they're just impossible to deal with?
So LIPA's getting kicked out of business. They're being downsized to actually become just a holding company for the debt that it has, and the rest of it's being sent off to PSE&G. Now, I'm not exactly happy with the process. I actually worked for Lazard Frere. I didn't work on it myself, but Lazard Frere actually recommended that LIPA be completely privatized, including the debt, and it would have saved money and it would have brought in private sector attitude if you would have had Public Service Commission utility regulations to oversee them, because LIPA was not under the PSC. So there was no private sector competition and there was no PSC. So there was no incentive. There was nobody really watching the store with them. So they're getting out of business. The governor proposed a plan. They modified it. He supported it ultimately. That the debt is going to be kept in this public entity with very few employees, and the rest of it's going to be turned over to PSE&G. There's some concerns because in the old days you had National Grid and LIPA were together, so that when there was a storm you could get the gas employees to actually help do the work to fix up the storm remediation stuff. Now we don't have that. And there was an argument that they should have put out the bid and done a privatization effort, and Con Ed would have been on it, and then you would have had somebody right next door could have helped you. But be that as it may, it'll be better than it was before. My job as county executive is not to run the utility, but is to hold them accountable for what they do and don't do, and I will do that.
And then, also, the second part of the question, in terms of the taxes, the real estate taxes, they're probably in the top 5 throughout the nation.
Top 2.
Top 2, okay. I think Bergen County is number 1 in New Jersey, I think.
Westchester's number 1.
Westchester,
We may be
okay.
number 1. Westchester office is number 1 and 2.
We're certainly top
But
2.
top 10
Certainly top
is
5.
New Jersey and New York.
Are there any ideas to reduce those taxes, or will they keep on climbing?
We have there's 5 reasons. This is a long thing, and people aren't going to give me that much more time. So there are 5 reasons your taxes are so high. One reason is common throughout every government in the world: waste, fraud, and abuse. You have to always go after that and run things better than they're run. Number 2 is in New York State, we have too many governments. Nassau County has 450 governments. You know, New York City is one government for 9 million people. The other 9 million people in New York State, there's 10,000 governments. So in Nassau, we have over 450. Suffolk, there's over 500. So you got to pay for a lot of that duplication. You get a lot of Cedarhurst mayors close to you, stuff like that. But you got to pay. But you got to pay for it. Number 3 is that we send a lot of our money to Albany and to Washington D.C. that we don't get back. We have a lot of wealthy people in Nassau County, one of the wealthiest places in the country. We send a lot more money to subsidize the rest of the country to the federal government. We send a lot more money to the rest of the state to subsidize upstate New York. We don't get our money back, and we have too many of these unfunded state mandates where the state says you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way, and it causes all these costs to rise. That's why our schools are so expensive.
Right.
But the ultimate reason,
There's the third part of my question.
the ultimate reason is we have to grow. Okay, I fought Albany. That's why I did the property tax cap, because by capping the taxes, sooner or later everybody's going to freak out at the local level and say, we can't afford to do this anymore because our costs are rising. They're rising because of Albany. So we need everybody at the local level to go after Albany and say, stop pushing these costs down to us. That's what has to ultimately happen, which is what the property tax cap will do. It's a blunt instrument that says, whatever you do, you can't raise property taxes above a certain amount anymore. This has been undermined by the Mangano administration because they've screwed up the assessment system. But the only real answer to the property tax problem is growth. We have to grow. We have to fight Albany and get them to get rid of some of these rules, which is very hard to do. And we have to grow. If we don't grow, without growth, we will not make it. People will move away. So New York City has better property taxes than everywhere else outside of New York City, because New York City has an income tax. So the property taxes are lower and the wealthy people pick up a piece of the pie. But nobody will ever give an income tax to the rest of New York State, I don't think, because nobody believes. They're thinking if you're going to take the income tax, now you're going to take the property, you're going to do both. You're going to increase them both, so it'll never happen politically. But growth is the real answer to everything.
One of the things we worked on nationally is the fee made for houses of worship. That's something that we've talked with the New York City mayoral candidates about, something obviously that has impact on you if you're an executive. Is that something that you would support?
100%. And the reason I'm running for office again is I understand how government works now, and I understand how politics works. I was mayor for 8 years, I was county executive for 8 years, I was in the private sector, I've got certain skills. I know how to get stuff done. I know how to get stuff done. And I will help you with that issue. Yes.
So, I mean, it's interesting you say, there's no Democratic or Republican way to pick up the garbage. But
Yeah.
the fact is, as you alluded to, Nassau County has got that one of the most inefficient systems of anything I've ever seen. 5 days a week of garbage pickup by guys hanging on the back of trucks.
Well, they're Republicans.
That's what I'm going at. It's machine politics, and it's worse for generations and generations and generations. How do you want to talk about how to improve life without increasing costs, you have to go after that. while not destroying the middle class. And
Right.
I understand why all these people are afraid to keep voting because.
Well, that's not the why. It's because it's a machine, like you said. And, that sanitary district, one of those sanitary districts, actually in one of the Orthodox communities, would have the vote for the sanitary district on Shabbos, so that people in the Orthodox community could actually vote. And you should see what's happening in the 5 towns. I wasn't going to bring this up. The 5 towns, they broke the 5 towns up, which was one legislative district before. They broke it up into 4 separate districts so they could dilute the voting bloc power of the Orthodox community. And the guy who was an Orthodox guy who represented the district voted along with it, so that his district was broken up from being an all 5 towns district into different pieces. So I pushed for consolidation in the past. I'm not pushing for consolidation anymore because you can't win the fight. It's impossible. I'm pushing for collaboration, which is I'm not going to get rid of these governments that exist because I won't succeed. I know I can't succeed. I tried very hard. But I'm pushing for getting these different 50 some odd school districts, 60 some odd villages, sewer districts, water districts, fire districts, library districts, to work together in a collaborative fashion where they can share purchasing power, where they can share back office functions, where they can find some synergies by doing things together as a group. It's really the school districts that's the most important thing. I started doing it back in 2008, the last 2 years of my term, and I was awarded the largest grant in New York State, $1 million grant, to get the school districts to collaborate with each other, and they were fighting me at the time. That $1 million grant resulted in $9 million in savings, but now school superintendents are saying to me, you need to come back, we want to do what you said before, because the property tax is forcing them to be more creative, and which is the good thing about the property tax cap. So we have to collaborate to try and find some efficiencies, as you said, synergies, as I said, to try and reduce costs without ruining the quality of life.
It's the only way. I mean, well, I've got kids in the West Coast public schools as well, and I see how squeezed they feel. But at the same time, we've got all these layers, and nobody's quite sure who to go to, where the solutions are.
Put it this way: the New York City chancellor of the schools gets paid, I think it's $250,000 a year. How much do you think all of the superintendents of the school districts on Long Island, that one position, but in 100 and some odd school districts, cost per year? It's like $60 million between their pay and their pensions and their health insurance and everything else. Then there's a deputy superintendent. Then there's a superintendent for business. Then there's a superintendent for curriculum, and then it goes on. So it's very expensive to have all these different duplicative efforts. So people are waking up to the idea that they have to collaborate more. But Mike Mangano has no interest in that type of stuff. He's not even opened his mouth about that type of stuff.
We'll take one
It's his
more
bread and
question.
butter, right? Yes.
There's definitely a lot of overlap in the local governments. It's a bit frustrating requesting something and being told, oh, that's the town in Hampstead. and
Right.
they
Oh, that's
say,
the village. That's the county.
That's
Right.
the county's responsibility. Something simple like, how about
The snow plowing.
traffic lights
Right.
in a certain
Traffic light is
streets.
all county. That one's easier. That's all county.
That's the one group that's very frustrating. The other, the presence of the police. When there's a crime, they come. Until there's a crime, speeding and not stopping at stop signs and jumping traffic lights, police are found only at one location, 7-Eleven. They don't need precincts, they just need to park outside 7-Eleven. And the final point is.
All right. So regarding the police, there's a problem that exists right now because the Mangano administration has reduced the police force to the smallest it's ever been, 2,100 officers. And in fact, what they've done is not only bad for public safety and enforcement and the stuff that you're talking about, but it was supposed to be done to save money. My office did a study when I was in office. The optimal size of the police force is 2,400 because once you go down below that level, your head count savings is overwhelmed by the overtime costs that you have. So when I left office, the overtime was $36 million in 2009. This year, it's $61 million. So any savings he's had from headcount reduction has been wiped out by overtime. And on top of that, it has a problem with training and supervision and, most important, morale. The morale is terrible in the police. And these guys are they paid an awful lot of money. It's the best job in America. But we've had more scandals in the police department in the past 3.5 years than we had in the 20 years before that, with people getting shot, police officers getting hurt or killed themselves, with officers in the middle of the day doing stuff they're not supposed to be doing. There's been all kinds of stuff, more than ever before. And it's all related to this reduction in the head count without redesigning the way the system operates. So the cops are out. We do have the lowest crime rate in America for any community over 500,000 people. My concern is that if the answer is only to cut the cops, or cut the roads, or cut the parks, or cut the mental health programs, or cut the drug and alcohol programs, ultimately our quality of life is going to go down. And I think it's going down already. And if the quality of life goes down, then you think young people are not moving there now? Older people will move away. Everybody will move away. And then we'll be in the same situation the city was in back in the 70s. When people left to go to the suburbs, they didn't have enough people to pay the taxes, so they said, oh, we can't raise taxes anymore, we can't do anything, so we have to cut. So cut. So they cut, and New York City became a joke. 1970s, New York City was, awful. So we don't want our quality of life to go down to the point where people will flee living there. So vote for me. I'll balance the budget. I'll put out a plan for growth. I'll make your lives better. And I'll fight for FEMA aid for the religious institutions. And I'll come to Kiddush if you'll invite me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.